Okay, I call to order the Monday, May 10th, 2021 meeting of the City of West Hollywood Public Safety Commission. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And it looks like Councilmember Erickson is going to swear in our new Commissioner, Robert Oliver.
And we have a surprise because I'm with Robert Oliver, safely distanced and vaccinated, of course.
Both vaccinated.
All right, Commissioner, to be ready? Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Robert Oliver.
I, Robert Oliver.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That while serving in the office.
That while serving in the office.
As a member of the Public Safety Commission.
As a member of the Public Safety Commission.
Of the City of West Hollywood.
Of the City of West Hollywood.
That I will support and defend.
That I will support and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties.
Discharge the duties.
Upon which I'm about to enter.
Upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful commission, everyone. And Todd, behave.
Congratulations, Commissioner Oliver. Roll call.
Chair Laughlin.
Here.
Vice Chair Berger.
Here.
Commissioner Balbone.
Here.
Commissioner Hallman.
Here.
Commissioner Norton.
Here.
Commissioner Oliver, welcome.
Here, thank you.
Commissioner Roche.
Here.
Any adjournment requests? Approval of the agenda?
I actually
move.
Oh, I actually have a couple.
Okay. Commissioner Roche?
Yes, thank you. I would like to actually move item 10G to right after code compliance update, so 10C. And then the other item I would like to move is 10F, right after the sheriff's report. So that would actually just remain 10F, but we were just moving it. So I'm just kind of shifting some things around since I want to know more about the block by block report prior to us diving into the sheriff's report. They're talking about proposed staffing, and I think that would be really helpful for me to understand prior to diving into the sheriff's report. Also, I noticed that the agenda was missing an item regarding Civilian Oversight Commission that we discussed in our last meeting. We wanted to have an ongoing COC item to discuss. I don't know if this was an item that was going to be placed within the context of reimagining police promoting equity, Measure J, or if it was going to be a separate. I was under the impression it was going to be an entirely separate item. So,
and sorry about that. As I thought it would be part of reimagining policing. We can certainly have it as its own item. I'll defer to the chair on that. We're good either way.
Okay, cool. Anyway, those were the three. Well, two modifications to the agenda, and then I just wanted to get clarification on the third. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, I'm fine with either way. If it fits underneath reimagining policing, I think that's okay. But I think that Commissioner Rossi just wants to make sure that it's verbalized, so we know that we're talking about it every month.
Yeah, we could spell it out, so it's listed in the list.
Got it. Okay,
and then it's for everybody.
So I'm confused. Isn't it listed right now, Measure J, under 10E?
I know the Civilian Oversight Commission, Commissioner Balbone.
Oh, okay. Got it. Got it. Okay, thank you.
So
yeah,
if I'm understanding correctly, I will add that where you see Measure J, in those
okay.
Yeah, I think that should work. I mean,
okay.
I just know that regardless of Measure J, there will be other items that will be coming up because of the COC.
Absolutely.
So I just want to be clear that that's either incorporated or separate. I just don't know how much information we're going to be bringing to the table every month regarding COC. But I am wondering though, I know that we're having a collaboration next month, a panel. So I don't know if that needs to be an ongoing item going forward, or if that's just a one-off and that could be discussed under this item as well. Sorry, I'm recognizing that I have a lot of questions.
No, that's okay. So the collaboration next month, it's just the chair and the vice chair that attend that. So I think that especially since I won't be on the commission going forward, after July will be my last meeting, that if you guys want to discuss maybe in July where you want to go with the oversight commission, if you want to have it every month or how you want to do it, and maybe after that June meeting, Tori and I will come back with other information.
And
Okay,
we'll talk
thank you.
more about the COC June meeting when we get to that point of the agenda on reimagining policing. We can go walk through everything.
Excellent, thank you.
And then as far as moving up, so you want to move up 10G to right after code compliance, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so 10G after code. And then what was the other one?
10F is going to remain at that point. So 10F, the impacts from cookies, I would just like to keep that next to the sheriff's report because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of correlation. So I
put
just
that above reimagining policing?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure. I have no objections to this. Does anyone else have any comments? Commissioner Berger, you're muted.
Yeah, I have some comments about that, or just any commissioner comments.
No, about this, about what Alana said. Do you have any issues with that?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
So we do need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay.
So moved again.
Second.
Okay, Chair Laughlin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Berger,
Aye.
Commissioner Balbone,
Aye.
Commissioner Hallman,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Oliver.
Aye.
Commissioner Roche.
Aye.
Okay, we have an agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Chair Laughlin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Berger,
Aye.
Commissioner Balbone,
Aye.
Commissioner Hallman,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Oliver,
Abstain.
Commissioner Roche.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
And next item is public comment, but as I understand, we still have no public comment, correct?
That's correct, Chair. Sorry.
Okay.
Trying to unmute.
Moving on to number 9, commissioner comments and liaison reports. Does anyone have it? Did you want to go, Vice Chair Berger?
Sure, I'll go. Welcome back, Commissioner Oliver. Good to see you back. There's a American with Disabilities Act. It's a community emergency planning webinar that's going to be on May 13th. And they'll be explaining the emergency planning and how it applies to engagement and collaboration between disability organizations and local emergency and public health preparedness planners. And I will get that to our liaison, Kristen Cook, for any of the public and our commissioners that are interested in that. And I also wanted to acknowledge that this is National Police Week. And there's going to be the 33rd annual Candlelight Vigil happening virtually on Thursday. There's going to be events all week. And this National Police Week is, it was started in 1962 by President Kennedy. And It pays special recognitions to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. And I believe California, we had, I think it was 10 or 12 officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. And I will also get that information to Kristen Cook for those that want to attend these virtual events for this National Police Week. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
I just want to welcome back Commissioner Oliver, who did a great job when he was here the first time around, and I'm sure he will again. So welcome back, Robert.
Commissioner Balbone?
I also wanted to welcome Commissioner Oliver. I also wanted to thank Chair Laughlin. I'm sure we'll have more time for that. But I wanted to touch on a couple of topics. I attended the community listening session sponsored by the Civilian Oversight Commission on April 27th. One thing that was stressed by a lot of the comments aligns with something that Commissioner Berger brought up, is that policing is a very, very serious profession. And one of the things that they talked about was both education level of officers and level of engagement with the community directly. And I think that those are things that I'll want to talk about a little bit when we get into the sheriff's report. I also attended the Measure J session on May 6th. They did a lot of ordering, and it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. And I would like to see us maybe think about any of the community service organizations that we work with that may be impacted by changes in funding. And then lastly, one of our local businesses, Bikes and Hikes, has been having some problems. And I noticed that the decoy car was out front. So I popped in there the other day, and I'm happy to report that it seems like it's helping. So I'm glad to see the decoy car back in operations, and it seems to be helping them with their problems. So
Thank you.
All I had.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Oliver?
Hi, I just wanted to say that thank you for the warm welcome, and it's good to be back. I am very much looking forward to working with every single one of you, and we have a lot of important issues coming our way, and on the agenda now. Keep it short, but the only thing I want to say is, please, if anybody hasn't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated. It is a matter of public safety. Side effects were minimal for me, but the benefits are immense. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Oliver. Commissioner Roche?
Welcome, Commissioner Oliver. It's so nice to formally meet you. I've heard much about you. Welcome back as well. I know that you served on the Lisbon Gate Advisory Board as I, so it's really great to be able to have this opportunity to work side by side or screen by screen for now. I do have a few things I would like to share. I was able to attend the Civilian Oversight Commission, which was on April 16th, shortly after our last meeting. And it was a panel that was on budget priorities and deputy clicks and use of force investigations. It was really well done. So if any of you are interested, I'm happy to share that link with you if you would like to watch it on your spare time, if you have any. Also, I just want to thank Kristen for sending me these. Really appreciate it. I got a stack of them. If folks will, okay, here, you can't really see them. Oh, there you go. It's the social services pamphlet. I just realized you can't see because of the green screen. It's really helpful, has a ton of resources. Request them from Kristen. I just want to thank her. I also want to thank Shay. I don't know if Shay's on the call, but thank you for sending over all the information regarding block by block schedule. Last meeting, I really appreciate that. But I did want hi, thank you. But I did want to mention that I was notified a few weeks ago about an incident that was basically a verbal and physical harassment incident towards a dear friend of mine who also happens to be a commissioner on the Business License Commission. And she, with a couple other of my friends, were at the Abbey. And I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but I just want to stress on this at this meeting. And though for all those who are listening in or watching at a later time, to really be careful. Please go in numbers. There is aggressive action that's happening, and I'm not seeing enough. This is not a news story. I'm sure I've seen in the 10 years of being here, I have heard numerous incidences of harassment. So this is still an issue. It's still an ongoing issue. I'm not really sure how to rectify it. I believe it's been brought to David Cooley's attention, but I would just like all of you to be aware. Please tell your fellow, your neighbors, other community members, to really just be mindful and careful when they're out at bars. Bars are reopening now. And between that and COVID, it is really, really unsafe. So just keep that in mind. Please let people know. And I really hope at some point we can have more of a conversation about this in terms of, sorry about that, in terms of how, like, safety in general at bars, at dining, etc., but specifically bars. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Shea. Can you give us a little bit more detail as to, like, harassed by staff, harassed by other bar goers, like sort of
other bar goers,
okay.
other bar goers, and it went on for quite some time, and it escalated, and it was not disrupted by security, local security, or I should say the security within the Abbey, hired staff. Management was not involved, even though they asked to speak with management. Council members were notified as well. They are aware of this. But all of us on public safety, I believe, I'm not sure if Kristen Cook was notified, but in the end, I know this is not like there's not an easy solution to this. It is going to be a really collective, community-oriented solution, as well as David Cooley's involvement. So just putting it out there, this is still happening. It's still an ongoing issue. It's still very relevant, more now, especially with COVID. I mean, if people, as Commissioner Oliver mentioned, we don't really know where everyone stands in terms of vaccinations. We don't really know. So yeah, it's unsafe on multiple levels.
Got it. Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Hallman?
Well, just piggybacking on what Commissioner O'Shea has just mentioned, is this something that we need to put on an upcoming meeting agenda for discussion?
I mean, I think that's something that we can. I think that's something that we can definitely discuss and vote on. But I think that, make a motion for. But I think that we would sort of need more details about what happened in order to how to classify it and where to put it, because it might fit under something else, or it might be a completely new topic. But I think that if we could have more details, that would be something that we could discuss. Commissioner Balbo?
I think it's important, knowing that our bars are opening and we've got kind of two things happening at the same time. We've got a lot of people who've been home and caged up and maybe aggressive and having issues, as well as many people may not have been out in public drinking, right? So we need to make sure that we're understanding that. And then the other piece is, I think we've got a lot more people who are angry and frustrated. And I know that you know this, Chair Laughlin, because many of them end up outside of your business location sometimes. And scream at patrons. And I'd wonder if we could add something on the agenda to talk about how our business community is working either with the sheriffs or others to address both of those things when we have, people returning. We've talked about it before here, that we've got lines and crowd control issues potentially, and also just aggressive actions and people maybe not being used to being out and about. And then the other issue, which we've talked about at several meetings, which is some of our transient population that is aggressive and or violent.
So it looks like I did receive an email today from the Chamber of Commerce, and it looks like in June they're actually hosting a meeting with Captain Ramirez and some of the business community about this topic. I think it would be valuable for anyone to attend that wanted to attend, and then come back and share insights at the meeting in July, and then we could go forward from there, because that would give us a broader sort of scope about what our business community is dealing with all across the city, and then we could make recommendations from July. That would be my suggestion, or we also invite people to the July meeting to speak.
I think that's a great idea. I wasn't aware of that meeting. I like that idea. I think it'll help to inform the agenda. I don't know if it's soon enough with some of the businesses opening, but
I think
I'll defer to others.
11th. Yeah, I think it's June the 11th. I'll find it in my email. I'll forward it to Kristen, and she can maybe forward it to everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, we have a weekly meeting. And again, I know we've got a bunch of guest speakers tonight, so we can talk about a lot of this later under the sheriff's report. But Lieutenant Mulder and I meet with the businesses twice a week, every Monday and every Friday. And one of those Fridays is going to focus specifically on public safety. But we do speak with the businesses, along with Danny Rivas, speaks with them even more than we do, to be honest, from public safety, about all these issues and managing patrons and lines and queuing and health order and all of that. But we can kind of get more into that later on. I don't want to hold up too much since we've got some guest speakers waiting.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments before we close this out?
I just want to add in, this is a good time to add this. There's a hate crime summit on May 19th, and that's going to include the FBI, the sheriff, the Alcohol and Tobacco Bureau. And from our last presentation last month, Marshall Wong communicated to us that there's at least double the amount of hate crimes that are going on out there that are not reported. So anybody that wants to go on to that summit, they can attend, and we'll get the information over to Kristen Cook.
Got it. Thank you. If there are no other comments, we can move on to 10A, report on domestic violence, intimate partner violence and programming. Are we all set up now with the YouTube?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm going to turn it over to David Juni, our social services manager, who can introduce our fabulous guest speakers for tonight and get this first presentation going.
Good evening, commissioners. I am David Juni, the City of West Hollywood Social Services Manager. It's very nice to be with you this evening. First, I wanted to thank Commissioner Roche for mentioning the Social Services Guide. This is the first time since I've been with the city for about 20 years that we have done a citywide mailing of the Social Services Guide. And this is also the first time that it's trilingual, English, Spanish, and Russian. So I'm hoping that most of you have received the guide. If you haven't, let Kristen know. We'd be happy to mail it to you. We'd be happy to mail you a few copies if you would like to get them to your friends and neighbors. But we're very excited to finally have that out for the city, for all of the city. It includes an insert of all of the emergency services that we have brought on since the onset of COVID. So also in 3 languages. So thank you, Commissioner Roche, for mentioning that. So this evening, I'm happy to introduce Mahid Al-Sharif from the LA LGBT Center. Mahid is going to present the services available to West Hollywood community members through the city's contract for DV and IPV services. I think we've all heard about the uptick in incidents of DV and IPV incidences since COVID. So it's timely. This is a contract actually that sits in public safety, but we work very closely with Kristen to facilitate these services. So with that, I'm not sure, Mahid, if you have someone with you, but if so, I will let you introduce them. And thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much to all of you for having us here to talk about our services and what we do and our recent report that we worked on. My name is Majid Al-Sharif. I work as a mental health clinician in the Stop Violence program at the Lgbt Center. And also I do outreach work. And I have our program manager, Noah. And Noah gonna start the presentation today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. Like Majid mentioned, I am the program supervisor at the Los Angeles LGBT Center Stop Violence Program, which is a program within our mental health department, which focuses on LGBTQ specificity for domestic violence. I know that earlier they were talking about hate crimes and victimization. So we also help those who have experienced victims of crime or who are victims of crime. So the LA LGBT Center Stop Violence program, we are one of two in the 6 counties in Southern California who focus on domestic violence. I believe the other one is in the city of Palm Beach. We are also one of 3 if I believe in the entire country who are LGBTQ specific for court batters intervention program. So within the LA LGBT Center, we offer crisis intervention, individual and group counseling. We have a outreach and education program as well, training and technical assistance for those who need it. We have specialized assessments for those seeking help or are escaping dangerous situations. We offer specialized referrals and advocacy to LGBTQ specific legal services or social services. And within the Stop Violence program, we have a smaller niche program called the REST Project, which stands for Respect, Empathy, Safety, and Trust. And in this specific program is the one that we offer most of our services for. Besides the mental health specificity, we offer emergency housing, transitional housing, basic necessities, such as food, clothing, transportation, household necessities. We also offer case-by-case basis, but we offer financial assistance for stability, which could possibly include rent, landlord advocacy, educational expenses, etc. And for that program specifically, we like to say that these services are specifically for those who have experienced homelessness or are at risk of losing their safe housing due to domestic violence and other crimes. So those are the services that we offer in the Stop Violence program. And then my colleague Majid will go into more detail about the our recent DOJ report.
Thank you, Noah. I want to start by saying that as a program, we were one of only 3 programs in the US that was awarded a Department of Justice grant for 3 years between 2017 and 2020 to increase mental health access for domestic violence and sexual assault victims. We did a comprehensive needs assessment in the county, as well as a first of its kind study that looked at the ability of mental health providers to safely and effectively work with LGBTQ victims. The document is entitled Finding Safety. I want to mention here that the research found that LGBTQ victims are more apt to access mental health providers when seeking assistance for domestic violence more than any other resources. Finding Safety found that mental health providers are not equipped to safely and effectively intervene with victims of domestic violence and often cause harm and increase danger to the victims. Our needs assessment survey determined the following. LGBTQ population experience higher level of violence in Los Angeles as compared to the larger metro area, state, and nation. There is a deep distrust on the part of the LGBT community toward the criminal justice system offering needed services. Barriers to access for victim support and therapeutic services are high, complex, and require multi-dimensional solutions. There is a lack of knowledge about resources for LGBT victims on the part of all stakeholders, as well as the victims themselves. Providers often do not know where or how to refer LGBTQ victims to needed services. Capacity is lacking in counseling and treatment, housing, and shelter and supportive services. The report also found that the greatest unmet needs of LGBTQ victims of domestic violence and associated crimes like stalking and sexual assault are for housing and mental health services. Actually, I have to mention also that many providers, when we did also the interviews, they talked a lot about heteronormativity and how that is affecting the quality of services that they provide, because we know that LGBT, there is a similar experience for LGBTQ victims and non-LGBTQ victims who's experiencing domestic violence, but at the same time, there are differences. And usually because of that, because of the gender role and all of the heteronormative assumptions that we have, usually LGBTQ domestic violence is not recognized by therapists. So that's in general the report that we have, and if you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Balbone?
So thank you. That is really helpful. And I'm curious, how are we in terms of the city of West Hollywood referring cases to you, and what are we doing to make sure those connections are strong, particularly in the instances where we have date rape or other things that happen? I would imagine that some of the resources that you have, if that's someone who's known and or in the same household, it would be really beneficial to people.
Yeah.
So we have a very comprehensive outreach program. We try to go to every Pride event or every possible event that we could prior to COVID. It's a little difficult now with COVID and events that have been canceled. But we do go to Christopher West Street Pride, and then we also have a LA LGBT Center location in West Hollywood, as some of you might know. And we pass a lot of postcards and pamphlets and papers just so people are aware of the services. And then we also drop some off at the City of West Hollywood City Hall, just so everyone is aware of these services. And we try to pass the word out that we do have a partnership with the City of West Hollywood, so it's a lot easier for its residents to seek these services and get the services. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Okay, Commissioner Berger?
Yeah, I imagine this is major for trying to get people to say anything. Do you guys have any numbers on that? What percentage of people that are actually experiencing domestic violence? And then any way that, what are some of the most effective ways that you have found, or something that we and our public can say to somebody that we believe may be experiencing domestic violence? Because I get the feeling that it's really, maybe most people don't want to report it.
Yeah, so there is, within the LGBT community, domestic violence, there is a huge problem with underreporting or not reporting at all. And that goes back to what Majid was mentioning, that just distrust and lack of empathy from the criminal justice system or other services that are heavily heteronormalized. So they don't want to report any issues. And there's also the stigma of just trying to keep the LGBTQ community looking good at all times, since we're constantly fighting for rights. So there has been an increase during COVID of people seeking services with us. From March 2020 to present date, we have seen 325 clients either self-referral or being referred from other providers. And we are trying our best to get the word out there. We also offer numbers for hotlines that people can call for advice if they know someone who has experienced domestic violence. We don't want to say that we give safety planning for those who know someone. The best thing or the best advice that we have is try to give them our information or other TV resources so they can contact, just for safety reasons. We don't want to get in a situation where we might cause them more harm than good.
I want to add also that actually we are currently working on our new outreach webpage that will be focusing on 3 populations in general: victims, providers, and also family and friends of victims. We're going to include, it's going to be videos, educational videos, and also articles, topics related to that, like safety planning, resources that they can reach, and topics especially also for providers, trauma-informed services. And we will be working with our marketing and communication department to have also all of these information and also on social media, so people can have access to it and know more about the resources.
Can you get the webpage to Kristen Cook to get out to us? I know that I have had people in our building that I'm pretty sure are experiencing domestic violence, and I would really like to know how to approach them, because it's going to be really, really sensitive and careful. I don't know how to do it exactly. So
you're absolutely right. And you know, the website is currently being developed, so it's not finished yet, but as soon as it's finished, we're gonna email you so everyone has access to it.
We do have our regular LA LGBT Center website for domestic violence, or our program. It is lalgbtcenter.org/stop. And that will leave you directly to our domestic violence webpage, where we do offer a warm line email and warm line phone number where people can call if they are in a DV situation. We can definitely send that information over so it can be handed out to anyone who might need it.
Commissioner Roget?
To that point, Noah, when you say warm, can you elaborate?
Yeah, so the LGBTQ, we don't, in the Stop Violence program, we don't have a hotline because we don't have clinicians available to assist if it's emergency situation. So we call it a warm line. So there's that differentiation that we're not a hotline, but we do offer crisis counseling if they are in need of that. If someone contacts us in the warm line, within the voicemail, if we don't answer, or when they email us, we will send an automatic response that gives them phone numbers of hotlines that they can contact for quicker and for emergency situations. And we always tell someone if they are in a very emergency situation to please call 911.
And we usually answer the phone calls or reach out to the client within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That's what I need to know. Thank you. So I have a better idea. I noticed that on the City of West Hollywood's website, there's actually a page dedicated to this specifically with resources. And maybe this is a question for David. I noticed that they have, the emergency numbers, which is, Sheriff's Department, and then there's the partnerships listed underneath. I guess the question is, if just to Vice Chair Berger's point, if there was a situation where my neighbors had a dispute, what should be my instinctual response? Would it be necessarily the Sheriff's Department, or is there another partnership that will be able to respond just as quickly?
So we would always recommend, if it's an emergency situation, to call the sheriffs. We do have the information also on the social services page of the city's website. If it's more comfortable just to say, the information is available, I would lead them to the website. It's easily found. I've been on it since the conversation started here. We also have a legal services guide that gives more detail about the services provided through this contract. But certainly if it's an emergency, the sheriff should be the first call.
Thank you. I do have one other question. Let me pull it up. It's your question. Oh yeah, it was regarding the clients, the 325 clients. So that was between which time frame? Can you repeat it? Do you mind?
Yeah, that was between the beginning of the pandemic, so March 2020. And then the last time I counted numbers was Friday, May 7th.
Okay, so March to May. And those numbers are clients that were referred from the city of West Hollywood or outside, or Los Angeles County?
It'd be Los Angeles County.
And is there a way to get an idea when you receive clients that live within the city of West Hollywood, is that identified?
We can pull that data. It really depends if they provide their address.
Okay.
Not everyone is comfortable providing their address to the city where they reside in. So I can't say if it's going to be as numerically accurate, but we can definitely pull data of those who have provided their West Hollywood address.
Yeah, I mean, you understand why I'm asking. I'm trying to understand what is really going on in our backyard during the pandemic, if we have strong numbers or data to support what it was like prior to the pandemic, currently, so on and so forth. And so I don't know, I don't really have a clear picture of what is currently happening in our city. I know that it's definitely underreported, and I really appreciate you acknowledging that and highlighting that in your report, and really specifying multiple reasons why, which is essential to this conversation in terms of heteronormative and the heterocentric issue of policing, right? And I know that I know the sheriffs in our city have been trained to be LGBT, lack of a better word, oriented. But again, generally speaking, that is not the case. So that makes a lot of sense. So thank you so much for the very detailed report.
Any other comments? No. Commissioner Roche actually touched on my two comments, which was really great. So if there are any other comments at all on this topic or for our speakers? Okay, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Balbone.
Just, you've heard the line of questioning. We're very curious and very supportive. Are there any recommendations that you have to us as a city or as a council that you can think of that we should be pursuing, thinking about beyond what's been raised?
I know they mentioned training with law enforcement. I think just more awareness and advertisement of that, yes, DV does happen in LGBTQ community, and sometimes it even happens more than with our heterosexual counterparts. But I think the problem with underreporting is the lack of knowledge. I know we've had situations where we will get victims who have been to jail or are court mandated to get some classes, and it turns out that they were actually the victim in the situation because there was issues with training of law enforcement, and then taking away that hetero normative lens of assuming that because someone looks a certain gender identity, then they are the abuser. So I would just say more awareness of that and of just DV in general.
Yes, and I would add also more training and information. Maybe the policymakers, they can have certain trainings about the specific LGBTQ domestic violence and how it's different from non-LGBT. Because when we're talking about the cycle of violence, it looks the same, but the experience of LGBTQ, there is so much support and resources for non-LGBTQ victims. But when it comes to our community, actually the support, there is a lack of support, and usually the victims always end up going back to the abuser, forced to be back. So understanding, having more training about how that happens, and maybe changing certain policies and providing, education about that can help a lot.
Thank you.
Roche?
So I'm hearing that there's a necessity for a financial investment as well to expand like shelters, et cetera, and then also policy and just like local policy as well, it sounds like. I don't know even or are you speaking to like federal policy?
I think we need all.
Okay.
I think
I just, in terms of, quick implementation, because policy is not fast.
Yes.
What would be the fastest way to achieve that? So, I have a lot of questions, but it's okay. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Commissioner Oliver? You're on mute.
There we go. I just wanted to thank both of you for taking the time tonight to present. I found it very helpful, and I'm looking forward to getting that information as well from Kristen. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add that we do offer LGBTQ domestic violence specific training. So if you would like to get the word out, if you'd like to specifically have certain agencies or certain departments or certain people get trained, we don't go into a lot of detail because it's so complex. But we do a very good 4-hour training of LGBTQ DV 101.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Roche, did you have another comment?
That was it. He answered it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate you coming and sharing this information with us, and I look forward to future collaborations.
Yes, thank you so much for making the time to come. Really appreciate it. You guys do amazing work. You've been a great partner for us for many years now with this specific contract, and we're honored that how well you treat everybody and how hard you work. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 10B, code compliance update.
We have Danny Rivas with us. There he is. I'm gonna turn it right over to Danny. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, and thank you, Chair Laughlin and members of the Public Safety Commission. My name is Danny Rivas, and I am the Code Compliance Manager for the City of West Hollywood. I'm here today to provide a code compliance update regarding our operations and priorities, as well as taking any questions the Commission may have. As an overview, the Code Compliance Division does consist of 3 core functions. The first is code enforcement, which is comprised of dedicated field officers who are credentialed and capable of issuing citations and prosecuting violations of the West Hollywood Municipal Code and relevant state codes. The second function is our business licensing and permitting team, which is made up of our administrative support staff who process a variety of business licenses, including cannabis licensing, extended hour construction permits, valet parking sign and meter encroachment permits, outdoor dining encroachment permits, and special event permits. This team also serves as the support staff and liaison to the Business License Commission. The third and final function is the oversight of the contract that we have with the Los Angeles County Department of Animal Care and Control for services that are provided to the community. Since the pandemic and public health emergency hit in March of last year, code compliance staff has continued to provide service to the community 7 days a week, Monday through Wednesday from 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. and Thursday through Sunday from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. As reflected in the staff report, the code enforcement function has experienced a 24% increase in the volume of service requests processed from July 1st through December 31st of last year when compared to the same time frame in 2019. The bulk of the requests that you will see reflected primarily are focused around quality of life issues such as noise, construction, and concerns with businesses. In addition, code enforcement staff has continued to field requests concerning loud parties and gatherings being held on residential properties and works in tandem with the West Hollywood Sheriff Station to address these issues. Just for further background, in June of last year, code compliance staff worked with the city attorney's office to adopt an urgency ordinance that added administrative citations as it relates to Los Angeles County public health orders as an alternative compliance measure, as opposed to issuing criminal citations for COVID-19 health order violations. So in essence, what was done there was to decriminalize the approach. So instead of issuing, again, criminal citations, which are generally notices to appear in court, we implemented an administrative citation process, which does not require folks to appear in court, nor does it affect any sort of background for the individual on the receiving end of that citation. In addition to that, code compliance staff has consistently performed educational outreach in the field to businesses and construction sites and presents to the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce every week on health order compliance. Other items that are a priority for the division currently include the oversight of the vacant property registration and inspection program, presenting a monthly item before the Business License Commission regarding COVID-19 Los Angeles County public health orders and compliance efforts, developing and amending the West Hollywood Municipal Code to continue to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of code compliance efforts, and implementing a new case management, citation processing, and business licensing and permitting software. I would also like to inform the Commission that a newly designed code compliance webpage has been implemented early this year and can be accessed on the city's website or by searching West Hollywood Code Compliance online. I would now like to turn it over to my coworker, Ms. Paige Portwood, who's going to provide an overview concerning the city's online service request application.
Good evening, Commissioners. I hope everyone can see my screen. As Danny mentioned, my name is Paige Portwood. I work in the Code Compliance Division. This portion of the item is intended to provide awareness and instruction on how to use the West Hollywood Official City mobile app. The WeHo Official City app is a great one-stop shop for the public to find out information about the community, businesses, events, services, and more. One of the best features of the mobile app is that it easily allows the public to submit service requests to code enforcement. I've created a brief PowerPoint presentation to showcase how users can utilize the app to do so. The first step is to download the app from your device app store. For iPhones, this would be through the App Store. For Android, this might be through Google Play. In order to use the app, every user must create a profile, which requires you to enter an email, create a username, and password. After these quick steps, you can start submitting your requests. The next few slides showcase what to expect after you download the app. The homepage is a great resource to find the topics you are searching for about the City of West Hollywood quickly. It not only includes submitting service requests, but links our most commonly visited web pages for you to browse through our city website. You can also create a profile easily by clicking the bottom right icon and entering the required information. To submit a new service request, you can either navigate back to the link provided on the home page of the app, or simply click on the plus sign at the bottom of the screen. You will then be prompted to select an issue category. The app will give you multiple categories to choose from, so you may select whichever one best fits your request type. You will then be asked to enter a location of where the issue is occurring. If you do not know the specific location, you may use an educated guess or use the address where you are located. You will click Next on the top right. Then it will prompt you to briefly describe the details of your request. For example, for a noise complaint, you might explain what type of noise it is, what time the noise was occurring, and then once you complete the description, you can submit your request. The last feature of the official city mobile app is the alerts button on the bottom of the icon list. This feature keeps track of your activity, such as the requests you've submitted in the past, ones that are pending response from co-compliance or another division, or even other public requests that you've commented on. This concludes our presentation. Please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for code compliance? Commissioner Hallman?
Thank you, Danny. In regards to the app, if someone puts in a request for service, what's the typical turnaround time?
Yeah, great question, Commissioner Helmet. So generally speaking, staff will respond within 24 hours. We do have set parameters by default that are reflected for our service requests. That is 72 hours, because if you have a specific officer that's assigned to a particular area, and let's say that they are off on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, then in some cases, if we don't have additional staff that are be able to respond to that particular request, then when that person returns back on Monday, that would be a red flag for them when they access the system to see what outstanding requests are there. However, generally speaking, when we have like any sort of life and safety issue or a serious type of request, then the supervisor who actually assigns the request will know which code enforcement officers are on for that day, and then we'll reassign that case. But generally speaking, it is within 24 hours is the goal.
And then my next question, obviously you're aware on the east side, Formosa and Detroit, that we're heavily under construction. I think we have 6, maybe 7 projects going at once. And there have been some issues at sites. Joe Torres, who I know handles our area, is amazing. Joe is amazing, but what is being done to address some of these repeat incidents that these developers continue to make, starting before 8 a.m., bringing in equipment before 8 a.m., keeping the properties secured so that transients and other individuals can't access them during other construction, during off construction time, because, you know, I love the development, but when you're living in the area and a lot of this is going on, it's just a continued nuisance that keeps happening. So is code addressing this with council, like maybe amending the construction code compliance policies, or do we even have them that they are required to follow?
Yeah, so to answer your question, I don't see a need for us having to amend any of the municipal code requirements. We actually went through a revision specifically as it relates to construction management standards. And so the approach prior to was that whatever conditions of approval that a particular site acquired from planning, our planning division, during that time, during their entitlement for that development, that is how our code enforcement staff were able to hold specific sites accountable for a variety of different things, as you mentioned. What we ended up doing back in late 2019, which went into effect last year, early last year, was codifying that. And so creating a specific chapter now in our neighborhood preservation title that specifically addresses a lot of the conditions of approval and things. So it is a matter of our field team getting out there, observing these issues. We know that there are concerns and things that are going on at certain construction sites. And so our approach has been one of gaining voluntary compliance, that meaning, right, we issue a warning notice, identifying what the issues are, and then allowing them to correct that. If it's something that's immediate, then we certainly address that. But what we've been moving towards now is going through and using our administrative citation process. And so as a code enforcement officer may go out, say today, for a particular issue, as you mentioned, somebody starting before 8 a.m., they observe it, they end up issuing an administrative citation. If they have to come back out for that exact same type of violation, let's say 3 months from now, or even 6 months from now, then what we're doing now is we're moving on to the second step in our progressive fine schedule, which would be a second citation, which for construction management standards, when we took that item in 2019, we also tied it to one of the higher end administrative citation fine schedules. So the first fine schedule would be $1,050, and then for a second violation, it'd be $2,050, and then for a third violation would be $5,050. And then at that point, if we're still having issues with the same site for the same violation within a 12-month period, then staff does send that case up to their supervisor, and their supervisor and myself then talk about issuing a stop work order at the construction site for a period of at minimum 2 weeks. So many times for these construction sites, even the fines we're unable to gain compliance in that way. But when you shut down the construction site for say 2 weeks or even longer, that is more effective in some cases, unfortunately, for the sites. But so we do understand and know on the streets that you mentioned. And so I know I had a meeting with our code compliance supervisor and the code enforcement officer, Joe Torres, as you mentioned. And so he will be fielding those, and we'll be adding additional resources as needed to help proactively address those issues, not just respond and wait for somebody to bring it to our attention.
Okay, what happens in the event that one of your officers doesn't actually experience the situation that maybe someone's called about? How does your department handle that?
Yeah, so we would make contact. I mean, the officer will still make contact with whoever the construction manager is on site, bring the issues to their attention, but without the officer actually observing it themselves. It's just really a matter of that officer honing in on from whoever's reporting on the specific day and time that this occurrence is happening, and then scheduling time to make sure that we're able to capture that so that we can issue that citation, because the officer does need to collect that evidence themselves and tie it to the case so that if that citation is appealed, then they're able to attest to that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, you're aware I'm very supportive of you and your department. I think you do a great job. We just have so much construction going on, and a lot of these site managers, they really don't care. You know, they are just going to do whatever they're going to do regardless. So it's concerning.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question for code? Commissioner Balbone?
Thank you for going through that. That was really helpful. I saw that there was an increase, a really dramatic increase in sewer problems. And I'm curious, do we know the root cause of that? Is it aging pipes? Is it that more people are at home? I mean, it was a pretty dramatic increase.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Balbone. And I'm trying to scroll down here on the storm drain discharges. So I see an increase. Are you talking about the sewer, or you're talking about the sewer, or you're talking referring to the storm drain? Okay. So it went, yeah, it did jump up to 16 requests as opposed to 3. You know, what we are seeing is with folks having to stay at home and be at home because of the health order specifically, we are noticing that has been impacting the buildings, you know, piping and so forth, and plumbing, because it's being more utilized. And so, you know, folks, as they're using it more, things happen, maintenance happens. And so that request can be something as you know, an apartment unit that is being clogged up. You know, it's maybe not necessarily a mainline issue or anything that's servicing that particular property. The bulk of these, without me kind of drilling down on them, I would assume are related to that, as I seen kind of some of the other housing issues that we see that has kind of picked up as well. But again, I just attribute that to folks being more at home and they're using that more often.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything that we should be thinking about related to that? Just getting anything out to the landlords, because it sounds like they may need to flush their lines or something like that, because I just am curious, or because my biggest concern was that it was actually in the city's pipes, but it sounds like it's more on.
Right. Yeah, no, you know, I really don't think that there's any preventative measures that can be taken, aside from the fact that, you know, we do have older buildings here in West Hollywood. And again, as you're having more and more folks that, you know, are using the restroom facilities, taking showers, et cetera. So just the stress of that and the high volume of that, I would just attribute that to, you know, the more use. And so there really isn't anything that I'm aware of that we can kind of push out in terms of them kind of maintaining your you know, your plumbing like you would your HVAC system, right? You want to make sure that you're replacing your filters. And so I'm unaware of anything that would it would be helpful, but I'm sure there is, because I'm not a plumber, and I'm sure they would say no, there are some certain things that you can do, but you know, it might be helpful. We can certainly reach out to some of our contractors to see if that's something that can be done, and then we can put that in a newsletter and even push that out with our rent stabilization and housing team too.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for code compliance? Commissioner
I
Roche?
have a couple.
Oh, hold on a second. Commissioner Roche's hands up, Marcy, and then I'll call on you.
That's fine, thanks.
Sure.
I just have a quick question regarding the noise ordinance. It's, you know, I was reading it and it seems fairly, it says it is prohibited to generate any noise from a party, event. This is for residential gatherings. And I see the time frames, but it seems that there's a lot of room for, I guess, like, what is the magnitude? Like, how do we identify what crosses the line in terms of like loud, you know, loud noise? Is there like a decibel that, I guess it feels very vague to me, the ordinance, in terms of like how it crosses the line into like it being a criminal issue and how police will then get involved. Can you just speak to more to that? Because it just seems very unclear to me.
Sure, absolutely. And are you speaking specifically about the noise ordinance section as it relates to loud parties and gatherings? Or are you talking in general? Because it does have, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that there is not a time frame as it relates to that specific subsection. And so it could be at any time of day, whereas our other sections, what you'll typically see is them referencing that timeline that says between the hours after 10 p.m. Is usually when that kicks in, right? But for loud parties and gatherings, if a resident is having a party in their unit and they simply have another unit or resident or neighbor that feels that it's getting to the point where it is too loud, too disruptive, it is being a nuisance or causing a nuisance, then our code enforcement staff will work with the West Hollywood Sheriff Station deputies and will respond and kind of field and assess that particular call to see if it is something that needs to be addressed immediately right then and there, or if it is something that we can simply advise the person in the unit to turn down the volume of their music. But there is no parameters, there is no decibel level to use. If it generates a call, then it's up to that field officer to go out there and really assess it. And they do take into account the time of day. Even though there is no 10 p.m. kind of curfew, if you will, on the noise, as you'll see with the other sections, that doesn't apply there because you may have somebody that's really playing their music extremely loud, and it may be 4 p.m. It may be 1 p.m. during the day, and so that definitely disturbs the peace. And so we can definitely work with the Sheriff's Department and our code staff to address that issue.
Thank you so much. I just noticed because of COVID and vaccinations that are happening, more of these are happening in people's residences. So I just wanted to have a better idea. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Oliver?
I actually had a follow-up question. Thanks for bringing that up. I have noticed now, since there's so many yards and balconies that kind of back up to one another where I live, there's more conflict going on between neighbors. I think things that would not have generated complaints a year and a half ago now are grating on people since we're all home. I know in the city of Los Angeles, I'm familiar with the noise ordinance there, not necessarily addressing unamplified human voice. Really, it focuses on amplification. In West Hollywood, I also noticed, because I was curious myself, I noticed that the noise ordinance is very broad. Does it, if someone calls because there's a few people talking, on a balcony, or it just something that would that be a noise violation, unamplified voice? I guess that's my question. Is human voice covered under the noise ordinance?
It doesn't break it down. Our noise ordinance doesn't separate unamplified or amplified. So to answer your question, that's not included in that. However, as I was mentioning a little earlier, is that we really wanted to provide that flexibility for the enforcement officer when they're responding to really assess the situation. And I can tell you in most instances where somebody may call and state that there is a party or a loud gathering going on, in many instances, it is somebody just being out on their balcony, having a conversation. That isn't something that the officer would cite for or even write a warning notice for. So, we would just go out, again, just kind of assess the situation. We'll, again, take into account what time of day it is. I mean, if somebody's out on their balcony and let's say maybe it's 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody's out, right? You can hear a pin dropping in some instances in some neighborhoods. Then that's something where we would ask, those folks, hey, could you please take it inside, and close your sliding door on the balcony? We've gotten some concerns. And 9 out of 10 times, that's how that's addressed. But we do get some instances where maybe somebody's out on their balcony and now they have, a radio or stereo system blasting out loud, and that's just, echoing out. And so even though in addition to them talking, you have a little bit of that sound kind of drifting as well, bouncing off the walls, et cetera. And so in those instances, we may end up issuing a warning notice and telling the folks, well, you need to turn it off. You need to move back inside So it all really kind of depends on the situation. We're really looking at what the ambient level noise surrounding that area where the call's coming in. We're taking that into account too. Again, going back to kind of the day and time. So if we can hear the traffic, the officer is really kind of gauging all of that, as opposed to using a decibel meter or, kind of looking at it from an unamplified or amplified perspective. So.
And has there been an increase in noise complaints during the pandemic, versus previous years?
Absolutely. It has actually skyrocketed. So to your point, we have seen a substantial increase. I mean, we would get those types of calls previously, but it has definitely increased. But a lot of times it isn't them having a loud party or gathering. It's sometimes just folks that are in their unit, and they're just trying to let off some steam and playing maybe their music a little too loud. And so that's, again, I think that flexibility really serves us well here in West Hollywood, because then staff are able to go out there, communicate with folks and say, hey, it's just us tenants in here. Yes, sorry, we had a glass of wine or maybe we had a beer and we're just listening to some tunes. And then we just advise them, just turn it down. And they do so. So.
Any other questions for code?
I do.
Sorry, Commissioner Norton.
That's okay. I first of all, Danny, thank you so much for the really detailed report that you gave us. It's very helpful, but it brought up some questions in my mind. One of which may just be that I don't know the way you're using the word when you talk about requests were processed, and then you talk about code enforcement cases were processed as a result of those requests. And looking at some of the topics, it would really seem counterintuitive to me if my assumption about requests, which basically I think means complaints or whatever, is accurate. But the two that jumped out at me most just as examples were under the heading short-term rentals on page 7. It talks about during the July to December of 2020, which is during the worst of the pandemic, it talked about an 82% increase in requests and a 95% increase in code enforcement cases, which seems to follow like you would expect. There are a lot more complaints, and you guys responded to them. And I'm assuming that that's because, that the reason that there were so many more complaints and that you guys got down on them quickly was because that this was during the worst of the pandemic, so that people had the idea that this might be a great way to make money if they weren't allowed out of their houses or their offices were closed or whatever. But I'm wondering if that's accurate. And the counter one to that is the one talking about late evening requests and late evening code enforcement cases. And in that one, it shows that the requests had a 28% increase during the height of the pandemic, while it had a 72% decrease in code enforcement cases processed at the same time. And so I'm hoping that wasn't too long, but also that you can explain to me what the requests means and why it would be so opposite each other in the late evening situations while they both increase so dramatically in the short-term rental cases.
Thank you, Commissioner Norton, and great questions. I can see that you definitely read through the report and looked at that and highlighted that. And you know, the reason why I say it's such a great question is that's one of the reasons why I listed one of the priorities of us implementing a new case management and software. And I know I listed some other, the business licensing side of things too. So right now we operate, our team really operates on like 4 different platforms, but specifically for service requests and for cases, those are 2 separate platforms that staff utilize. And so right now what they're working off of primarily is the service request platform, which is what Ms. Portwood had actually gone over with the application. And so whether our code enforcement team is actually identifying issues proactively, meaning that they're not just responding and waiting for somebody to report these things, they're actually seeing it while they're out patrolling, they do create a request. And that request is assigned to them because they're the officer that identified it and they're addressing it. In addition to that, anybody who is reporting anything is also reporting through that, whether they contact our weekly message line and leave a message. All of that information is then translated and entered into this service request platform, online platform, or whether somebody is submitting it online, like Ms. Portwood just went over as well as a part of her presentation. So the discrepancy that you're seeing between a high volume of requests versus the actual code enforcement cases is because if the officers are able to gain voluntary compliance quickly for an issue, so if they go out to Commissioner Hallman's point and let's say somebody was starting before 8 a.m., the officer can create a request or work off of that request that they were assigned, take their photographs, issue a field notice or a citation out in the field, and then also reflect that in that request system. And if they're able to gain compliance, then there isn't a need to create a new separate case in a different online platform, which I don't want to say is duplicating efforts, but in a way it kind of is. And one of the drawbacks of our online case management system, code enforcement cases, is that it's not web-based. And so what that means is, so when the officers are out in the field, they do not have access to that system, and they have to wait until they go back in the office to start entering in their case notes. Whereas the service request system and platform, again, that Ms. Portwood went over, is web-based. So the officers do have access to that. We did implement and incorporate in-vehicle units in every one of the code enforcement officers' vehicles. So when they're out there in the field, they can take their pictures, they can access that service request platform. So that's why you're seeing, again, just that very high volume of service requests that is getting pumped out by our staff, by our team, because they're able to utilize that software system out in the field. So they're really utilizing that as a case management system, which is not what it's intended for, but it is working for the time being until we implement the new system. So I hope that wasn't too long of a winded response, but that is the reason why you're seeing differences there between the two.
Thank you. That made it very understandable, and I appreciate it. And the follow up on the specific examples I used, I did have just that one question about why the enormous increase in service requests and also cases created having to do with the short-term rental issue during the height of the pandemic.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so for the short-term rentals, we've really seen an increase, again, going back to folks having to be at home, staying at home and being ordered to do so through the health order. We've seen increase across the board as it relates to folks observing things that maybe they weren't paying attention to before because they were having to go to work or they were more out of their home than they are now. And so we've seen that increase. You know, again, my perspective is that, you know, people are paying more attention to things and these types of issues more so now than they have before because of the issues that maybe some of them are creating. And so staff is fielding those requests that are coming in through the system. But because these cases take a lengthier time in terms of gaining compliance, there's a lot of investigation that goes on with short-term rentals. And so staff will, and they have been directed to create a code enforcement case for those specific types of requests. And so that's why you're seeing kind of the increase in service requests along with the code enforcement cases, because they're going to have to kind of deal with this case, not only when they gain compliance, we also want to follow up. And so even though if somebody's pulled down their listing, staff has confirmed that they are not advertising from a short-term rental perspective, staff is again directed to keep that case open and ongoing, to recheck in and just make sure that we're not going to have a repetitive issue in the future. And so those cases by far require a lot more documentation, notices, et cetera, that are sent. And so that case management system is more beneficial in terms of doing that versus the service request platform.
Right. Thank you. That was very helpful. And once again, we're all very impressed with the job that you're doing and that code compliance is doing these days. So thank you for all of your hard work.
Well, thank you. And it's definitely a team effort. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I have a quick question about the short-term rentals. Is that a problem that we're seeing in the big sort of new luxury type developments, or is that a problem that's sort of increased because of the rent stabilized units and other units losing tenants because of the pandemic?
You know, the increase, although we are seeing an increase in the service requests and that, you know, trickles on down right to the cases and even the citation volume that you've seen that increased, in actuality, we are not experiencing an increase. And actually, Ms. Portwood is working on an analysis staff report that we're going to be bringing forth to a city council to provide an update regarding short-term rental enforcement in our home sharing business licensing program. And so what we have seen is actually a substantial decrease since the inception of the program in 2017. And I don't have the numbers, you know, off the top of my head. And Ms. Parrott, if you know them off the top of your head and you can maybe speak to them, but I think just the reporting fact and the increase, and again, just the folks being at home and seeing this type of activity more, that's the only thing that I can put my hand on as why we're seeing an increase. But overall, if you're looking back the number of listings, the number of rental units in the city that we had in 2017 to where we're at now, it is a substantial decrease, excuse me, that we've seen year after year. So the program is effective. It is working. It's just a matter of just continuing to kind of keep these levels at a sustainable, you know, volume and pace. So.
Got it. Thank you. Does anyone else have comments for or questions for code? Commissioner Berger?
Danny, since you came on, it's just pretty amazing what you have accomplished. I used to go on to the app and you can get to that app online. And I used to have a lot of residents complaints, and I'm just hardly getting them anymore. And I've noticed that your turnaround time is fast. My question to you is, I know it's not perfect yet, but what are you doing to gear up for, I believe, the smoking policies, number one, and then secondly, what are you going to be working on now that you believe will have the biggest impact on public safety?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I was trying to unmute there. And thank you so much for the comments. Again, it's definitely a team effort, and I have a great team and even a partnership with public safety and the Sheriff's Department. So we all work in tandem. So thank you so much. You know, in terms of what I feel at this point is the biggest public safety I think it's just from what we're seeing from a code compliance perspective, is definitely the reopening of businesses. You know, as these health orders are getting less restrictive, and as everybody's been informed that everybody's looking to that June 15th date that's just around the corner. You know, I can't stress enough how important it is from a code compliance perspective to make sure that we're continuing to work with our business partners, addressing some of the issues that folks are either bringing to our attention or that our code enforcement staff are seeing when they're out patrolling the streets. You know, that is going to be so important. It's just educating folks, making sure that the businesses are doing their part, and making sure that the community is doing their part as well. So that's what I see at this point right now, really being the biggest issue from a code compliance perspective, is just making sure that everybody's reopening safely, and that folks that are coming in and visiting are following the guidelines that are still in place. Because, you know, I give you an example of, you know, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, there's been a change, right, that was released from the CDC. There was a change that was even released from the Los Angeles County Health Department that allowed folks outdoors don't have to wear a mask, right? And so that, however, got misconstrued with the business activity and the commercial activity. So folks were thinking and under the assumption, well, then that means that if I'm at a restaurant or if I'm visiting a hotel or whatever it may be, that I don't have to wear a mask if I'm vaccinated. And that's not the case. That's not true. So again, just, you know, pushing out the right information, working with our business community, which I have to say have been stellar in terms of addressing those types of issues. I know that there are things and instances that do occur, and it makes it very tough for them too, when you have folks that are not complying with them that are in their establishments. And so that's what I see right now being the biggest issue from code compliance. To answer your question about what we are doing with the smoke-free housing ordinance that was passed by City Council. And so we have started our outreach campaign, and that has consisted of us doing a mass mailer to all of the rent stabilized and rental units, you know, also providing them with a copy of what is required to be posted at these units, these specific timeframes in terms of what areas are allowed for residents to continue to smoke versus not. And so it's giving them an overview of all of that information. And then in addition to that, we're working with our communications department in terms of doing press release and, you know, getting the word out as much as possible, even through our social media platforms. And we don't want this to just be kind of a one-time thing, because there are different timelines. We are going to continue doing that. And so when the next time frame comes around in terms of folks not being capable of maybe smoking inside their units, when that time comes, then we will be sure to revisit that, do another mailer, in addition to pushing it out on social media and working with communications on that.
Thank you. And I've heard nothing but good comments about your team. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that on. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Does anyone else have comments for code? Commissioner Hallman?
That's just one last question, and Danny, it's just great having you here. So there's so many great questions. Under animals, I see there's a slight increase with off-dog leashes. Is there a law in the books that animals have to be leashed in the city?
Yes, there actually is. And what we have always done traditionally, and what most contract cities do that contract with LA County Animal Care and Control, is they adopt their municipal code in the Los Angeles County Code as it relates to that. So to answer your question, yes, there is a code on the books that addresses folks having to have their dog on a leash.
So then are they cited or warned, or how is that handled?
Both, a series of both. And one of the things that we're looking at right now is potentially getting out of the contract with Los Angeles County Department of Animal Care and Control, and looking to the City of Los Angeles Department of Animal Services, because of the distance between the shelter. Right now, our county shelter is in Carson, versus, you know, the City of Los Angeles actually being right around the corner on the other side of Beverly Hills in West LA. And so it's a lot closer. And so response time to even having animal control officers that maybe are patrolling our parks on a more frequent basis to be able to address these types of issues. Our code enforcement staff does have the capability of addressing a dog off on a leash, and they try to get to those things as quickly as they can. But the reality is with all the requests that we have coming in, by the time an officer actually gets out to the site, somebody's already gone. You know, that dog, whoever's being walked is already gone. And so it makes it difficult, but it could be a citation, but it can also be a warning notice. It all depends on whether or not we've had contact with them before. And so that's really the basis and the criteria of what would it, you know, lead to a citation versus a warning notice.
Thank you.
Any other questions for code? No. Thank you so much, Mr. Rivas, for your report. And thank you, Ms. Portwood, as well for coming. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Paige and Danny.
I believe we are moving on now to 10G, the block by block security ambassadors and proposed staffing for 2021-2022.
So before Shay gets started on this, the reason I had mentioned the staffing is for those of you that listened to the City Council's subcommittee meeting on budget last week, you heard the discussion of a possible adding another MET team, a city-funded MET team as a possibility, and also possibly an additional funding for non-sheriff security. The notes that we have as staff to consider, let's say that's granted, would be possibly to pursue a block by block kiosk type layout at the Gateway, you know, or somewhere near the east side, the Dillon, as Commissioner Hallman mentioned earlier, you know, we would work with all of you to place that type of service. Also, Shay, who's with us tonight, also mentioned that there may be some needs on the west side as well. So again, just up for debate. I just wanted to make sure that the notes I've taken for east side kiosk, that there was nothing else that you wanted us to know kind of as we go into the formal budget process with the City Council. So if they do say, yes, you may have additional funding for that, just want to make sure as we have to quickly renew the contract before June 30th that we have all the commissioner comments in place.
Okay.
And if I got the notes right from last time, then we're good and we can move right to Shay and his report.
I mean, I think that the notes for everything were good. I think I would also add, while I support the east side kiosk, I think that is there a possibility of having like having something in mid city, or is that what we're counting the office by Poinsettia Park from? Because I feel like a lot of the times everybody's over on one side or the other, and sort of in the mid city it gets a little fuzzy.
And for me, again, you know, depending on funding, lots of things could be possible. I would think lots of things won't be possible this July 1, but if we, you know, want to prioritize, then I can put them in order of funding, work with Shay on the staffing, and then not to say that those others aren't priorities anymore, but like if we make adjustments at mid-year or next fiscal year when the city's revenues look a lot better, back to normal, we would assume, you know, then we can start adding those other issues as well, if that makes sense. So like I can add that to the list, but just kind of looking to the commissioners, because in my mind, the east side location is kind of first. Shay's comments about his, you know, where he sees holes for his staffing would kind of be where I would head second, and we could put Center City third. But if commissioners want to order that a different way, now's the time to kind of talk about that, just so I have it correct. I doubt we're going to have funding for all of it, so that's kind of why I'm asking for a little bit of direction on prioritizing them.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments on that before Commissioner Hallman?
Thank you. I mean, Kristen, you know how passionate I am about having a kiosk on the east side, Santa Monica and La Brea. There are a lot of businesses there. We've lost Boss Burger and Kale Me Crazy. I'm assuming due to the pandemic and closures, it's just difficult for businesses. But that corner because it's the gateway into West Hollywood, and across the street is LA. I just think it's extremely important, especially with the residential housing being there and trying to get businesses on the east side. I've just seen it to be very beneficial in Plummer Park, and not to negate what's going on mid-city, but I personally would love to see that area, if possible, addressed most urgently.
Thank you. I'm definitely not opposed to in my opinion, to putting the east side on the top of the list, but there are definitely there's a lot of tourists, a lot of residents, a lot of things in Center City, and then also on the west side too, that I feel like, especially as things pick up and bars open and things like that, that having everybody stationed or having that sort of thing in mid city and on the east side, especially as mid-city grows a little bit, is also very important. So I just want to make sure that we don't concentrate all of our resources just on the east side after that kiosk gets completed and pushed through, because I think Plummer Park is still considered the east side, correct?
Yes, but the park restrooms were really specific about the park restrooms. Like, those issues were very specific to that location. And those ambassadors have done an amazing job turning that around, as all of you have seen. But it's a completely different thing than adding them at La Brea and Santa Monica, if that makes sense. We also have security ambassador that address the restrooms at West Hollywood Park as well. So park bathrooms are kind of their own animal.
Got it. And I think if we're looking forward into the future, and correct me if I'm wrong too, if we're talking about the possibility of having a subway stop at Santa Monica and La Cienega, correct? And that's sort of what I count as mid-city. And I know there are a lot of issues that go there. And I think that security and safety is going to be an issue in the future. So that's something that we should keep in mind for that particular area. And then also on the west side, as also those subway stops get added, and then again, like in the more current time as everything opens back up again.
And yes, exactly. I'm taking those notes. And then also for the opening of the new building at West Hollywood Park, like, additional resources will be added for that facility and kind of surrounding area. It won't be immediate. It'll probably be late fall, but there will be some west side additions as well.
Got it. Does anyone else have any comments about funding before we get to Shay's report? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Berger. I'm sorry, Commissioner Balbo. You moved, Carrie, your box moved onto the other part of the.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to echo the comments around City Center. A couple of things that I think are important is that intersection of La Cienega is pretty heavily trafficked. And then if we think about the fact that we have a lot of people visiting the city, you have the CVS right there in the corner that many of the hotels are accessible to. So people walking around that area and other things, I think it's really important to make sure that we are monitoring the city center. And I would also say that it sometimes is a little bit of a vacuum. But I agree that the east side needs an overview for, kind of dedicated resources first. But I would not want to leave out city center, especially when we keep looking at the crime stats. Because it's clear that there's needs there.
Got it. Thank you.
And
Anyone else?
to clarify, the resources probably won't cover both. I mean, I think we're still in that pandemic year where revenues are at, historic lows, even though they're picking up. So I just want to manage expectations here that if we have a list of 1, 2, 3, we're still not sure number 1 is going to get funded for July 1, if that makes sense.
And Kristen, that's a really good point. And I guess the thing that we would want to just keep looking at then is the hours and, splitting time and rotating. And I know that Shay does a good job of that, but it would be good to just get kind of a summary of that regularly coming through, just when we see those ebbs, flows, and shifts and changes. I think that would be helpful, because if we've got to do more with less or balance what we've got, then I think we just have to use all of the information and talk about it here potentially, just so that we can stay on top of it.
Definitely. And I think we're just kind of at the point where we're going to balance what we've got add maybe just a little bit more for July 1. Maybe we'll see how the discussions go. And then I'll defer to Shay at this point to start his report. And then I'm sure he'd also be willing kind of at the beginning of the fiscal year, maybe for the July meeting, to talk about his, kind of plans for current staffing for the next fiscal year. So just kind of what days, what schedules, where are they, what are they doing? We could probably do that at the July meeting if Shay can do that. Sorry, I'm looking for Shay.
Yes, definitely.
Shay, I think there he is. Okay.
Good evening, commissioners and city staff. Shay Gibson here with Block by Block. I'm going to go over the numbers. The last time we had this meeting, it was mentioned to me that, you guys already know the numbers and you've seen it. So I'm going to try to just maybe highlight some other situations for you guys. So in the month of April, a lot of homeless contacts. So in Santa Monica, we had 258 homeless contacts at our usual hotspots, which are to include 7-Eleven Hayworth, 7-Eleven Curson, Karina's Cleaners, Astro Burgers, Starbucks, and McDonald's, to name a few. We had a little damaged property over at Plummer Park around 418, which was simply just the restroom door being off the hinges. So I believe someone tried to possibly break into the restrooms while overnight while we weren't there. But that situation was straightened out by park staff. We have received requests from Bikes and Hikes as well to possibly increase patrols in their area because they have been seeing an increase in transient activity around their properties. Going into a little bit of the harassment that I did hear mentioned earlier, we have received quite a few calls in regards during the club hours, West End mainly. Most of the calls are would be something as like being followed, uncomfortable verbiage, things of that nature. So we try to respond to those as fast as we can. Most of the time, the individual is either gone and or when he sees us approaching, they're taking off in the other direction. So, but we definitely try to get to those and address those as fast as possible. Had an assault reported down by the Melrose team. They were flagged down by a resident stating that he was about to be assaulted and robbed at gunpoint by two individuals. We encouraged him, of course, to place a call to the West Hollywood Sheriff Department like we do. And we would keep an eye out for that individual with the description that was provided and pass that information on to the sheriffs as well. This was on 4/16 around 7:41 p.m. In the evening. They were flagged down next to Earth Cafe, to be precise. Other than that, yeah, it's just been the same rigmarole that we deal with as far as the homeless and transient population that seems to love the city. So, are there any questions with anything?
Commissioner Roche?
Thank you, Shay, so much for that great report. I have a question regarding for future reports. I'm wondering if it's possible to break up these reports into West, Central, and East, so you can see, okay, that would be great, because I appreciate the month by month, but also section them out as well. I think that would really inform the commission as to how we can proceed in terms of placing staff as well. Thank you for also identifying the difference between Sunset versus Santa Monica and Melrose. That's really helpful. So if we can just do one more layer and do West Side and Central and East, that would be great. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Anyone else have comments for Shay? Commissioner Berger?
Shay, were you going to speak on the potential addition of the schedule of a Met team? Kristen, did you mention that? What kind of a time were you guys looking at if you did get an additional team?
So for Met, obviously that's not.
I mean block by block. Sorry.
Oh, so for block by block, again, based on the commission's comments the last time and this evening, depending on how much funding, a 40-hour staff person is about $50,000 annually. So it depends on what that dollar amount is. So you can't contract for part of a person, you have to hire a whole person. So, if we're adding 2 ambassadors to Shay's team, that would be, about $100,000. So we have to wait to see how it progresses through the council's discussions. The subcommittee that discussed the budget last week was talking about a dollar amount around 150. So we'll see what kind of comes out the other end. We still have 2 council meetings to get through where the budget will be possibly discussed at both, but definitely on the consent calendar for like a first reading. And then the second meeting in June is usually the approval.
Okay, and then so if you do get an additional net team, I guess that'll take some of the weight off of the block by block as well. Were you talking about bringing them in?
They're
like
different services, so they don't replace each other. They complement each other. So at some point, if somebody's experiencing a mental health crisis, it would not go to block by block. It would either be Met or general sheriff's deputies at that point. One of the things that strategic initiative staff are working on, and they may have mentioned it last time Corey was here visiting the commission, is possibly like a behavioral health crisis response team. That's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week resource. So things default to sheriff because they're the only one around at 3 o'clock in the morning some days. Even code things default to sheriff in some case because code isn't 24/7 either. So Corey's team is exploring, is there something that the city can it's going to take a lot, but slowly put into place to have those resources available 24/7 as well. It would need probably a brick and mortar location. It would need to change fundamentally how calls are dispatched. Like it's a lot, but they are having those conversations internally. Their next step is to talk with council members. And then kind of as council gives their initial thoughts, then they'll obviously be circling back with us as well. But that is a very long way off.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is it jumped out at me when council passed the all genders restrooms, and I saw the pictures of them, and they were kind of almost like the Plumber Park ones that had the full doors where they could lock in, and that's kind of the thing that we kind of tried to fix in Plumber Park. I know you guys have probably thought about that already, about how to address that, so those same kinds of criminal activity don't happen in those same kind of
park.
Yeah, like in Plumber Park, you know how you change the bathroom doors?
Right. No, do you mean
because they were the full length, and people could go in there and lock themselves in, and
right. So from what I understand at the new park building in West Hollywood Park, that like sinks are being moved to the outside, the doors won't go all the way to the top and the bottom. Like facilities has made some design changes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions for Commissioner Roche?
Real quick for Shay, I noticed that on your Sunset Team breakdown, it shows business contacts. So the majority, can you just elaborate a little bit about what that means, business contacts?
So the business contact is basically we'll go in proactively to check in with the business, speak to hopefully a manager or whoever is the higher ups at the time working to find out if there's any questions, comments, or concerns or anything that's been going on as far as a transient activity or any unruly activity that they would like to report to us, and we can either rectify the situation and or pass that information on to the sheriffs.
What has been the feedback when you do that?
Normally, I mean, the overtone is always transient activity or panhandling.
Okay.
Mainly, yes.
Are they grateful for you to stop by? I'm just curious are they happy that you're actually checking?
They seem to be pleased and grateful when we stop by and show our presence. They wave to us. offer us things sometimes as far as water, if it's hot and things like that.
Okay, but it's a positive interaction. I just want to make sure you're also being treated well by our business owners.
Thank you, I appreciate it. But yes, they are all positive interactions, yes.
Okay, excellent. And I'm guessing that's the same for Santa Monica Boulevard, business managers, and the parks I see here. Okay, yeah, all that's great. Thank you so much.
No problem, thank you.
Does anyone else have questions for Shay? Okay, thank you so much, Shay, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, thank you, everyone. Be safe, and let's continue trying to put this city together.
Thank you. Moving on to 10C, report from the fire department.
All right, there we are. Well, good evening. So just wanted to start by letting you know that your fire family is doing well. And for the month of April, we are at average for the amount of responses that we've had within the city of West Hollywood. I wanted to pass on a thank you to the city of West Hollywood and the citizens for the support for the rapid intervention crew drill that we did, and that was at the Comedy Store on West Sunset Boulevard. And we're there from 9 in the morning to noon. And basically the rapid intervention drill is where we do a mayday. That's where we have a firefighter down and we practice survival skills for our firefighters in the event of a mayday, which is an emergency that we have a firefighter that's down due to loss of air, a firefighter that's trapped, fallen through a roof, or lost and disoriented. So we did a very robust multi-company drill that just has so much value to it when we can perform in that fashion with hands-on training. It is invaluable what we can do for the safety of our people to have best practice so we can save others and ourselves. Because we know within the organization and different communities have different challenges. West Hollywood has some significant challenges due to traffic, the age of the buildings, the population, the density. So thank you so much for that support. We also had our law enforcement partners there, and we also had the Los Angeles City Fire Department there, which we respond with quite often throughout the area. So thank you very much for that. One thing it also does for us, it helps us bring out our chief officers and our engine company captains to work on the element of command with the incident command system, to work through the problem, to have this life-saving based scenario to enhance those skills for our people that are in command. So probably the biggest thing that I have before I close out, I'll leave it to Megan or Chief Delaney, who's on, if they have anything they'd like to add, and then I'll close out with a few other items. So I'll go to Megan first.
Yeah, there was one quick thing I wanted to mention. For the new commissioners, I'm Megan Courier. I'm the Community Services Liaison for Division 7 of LA County Fire. The thing I wanted to touch on is that a few of our cities have reached out to me regarding our CERT program, wondering when we're going to resume offering CERT classes. And so I wanted to let you guys know that we are currently working internally to get our CERT program back up and running. And we're planning on offering classes again after June 15th. So if there's any interest in that, you guys can reach out to me and we can schedule classes for West Hollywood. That's all I have.
Great.
Does anyone have questions for fire?
I have a closer if you wouldn't.
Oh yeah, take it away.
With Chief Delaney, he's on duty right now, holding down the fort. Anything to add, Chief Delaney? Oh, I put him on the spot. You're on mute there, Chief.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, I just wanted to mention it was nice to meet with Kristen and Cleo Smith to evaluate our operation out on Robertson and Santa Monica with the OUT program and having the street closure, and to try to go over public safety and what our needs are to improve that operation over there. So.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Delaney, for spending so much time with us out there Saturday night. Really appreciate it.
Fabulous. Thank you, Chief Delaney. Okay, so the closer for me, I just wanted to welcome Commissioner Oliver for being back, and I thought it was a great touch to do it in person on the ceremony. That was great to have that personal touch. That was great. It made us all smile, I know. And I just want to extend a thank you to the City of West Hollywood and the residents for the support from us, your Los Angeles County Fire Department, for being able to serve you, things that you may not hear. We have people routinely, I'll use the word, touching our firefighters in the community, thanking them for what they do. And I know that we are all appreciative of what they do day in and day out. We strive to be the best that we can be. We train hard, and we're there to be those proud protectors of life and property. And I just wanted to extend my thank you to the city and the residents in West Hollywood for the support of the fire department, because it goes without saying that they put the community first before they put themselves. And I just wanted to publicly say thank you. We've gotten a lot of outreach within the last year with our firefighters, so thank you for that. So that's all I have. Thank you so much. Any questions for fire?
I just kind of want to let the commissioners know, because you would never say it yourself, but the firefighters and paramedics have been working so hard this past year during the pandemic and during the horrible winter surge. Our local battalion chiefs, like Chief Delaney and his colleagues, were working with Cedars to address patients in the parking lot and lined up in hallways, and ambulances backed up, and everyone's running around like the pandemic's over, and we are not done yet. And I just wanted to thank you all for the really kind of behind the scenes role that you've had to take care of our residents, because we had quite a few fighting COVID this year. So, and you saved a bunch of lives. So I'm just very grateful for all of you thinking outside the box when the hospitals were full and continuing to give West Hollywood residents excellent care.
Thank you, Kristen.
Does anyone else? Commissioner Berger?
I just have welcome, Chief Delaney. A question we asked, I think it was Commissioner Balboni to Chief Gorbani last time about the psychological calls, and he was going to dig a little bit deeper into details about those. I don't know if we heard back from him on that. Did you guys, anybody follow up on that?
On the amount of psychological calls that we've had?
Sorry, Chief. Jason did follow up, but I don't think he had the answer yet for you, Tori. So he was going to talk to your folks that code the calls, but he did give a summary on, how things are coded psychological, and that it's a broad thing. But I know he's not around right now to ask, but Tori, I'll make myself a note that either he follows up with Chief Smith or me, but I know he was doing some digging before he took a few days off.
Right.
Thank
you.
you.
I can speak to that in a limited basis. So you have to remember that the nature of the emergency that we get is a description of whoever calls 911. So the nature of that emergency could end up coming in as a person sick, and then maybe we have someone that is having a mental health crisis. So it would be, we could actually look at the data and say how many calls that we came in that were actually mental health related. Yes, but there is an amount also that could be counted that it wasn't a mental health crisis, or there's those that could have been counted as a mental health crisis. It's all depending upon the nature of how it was reported, and then based upon the patient assessment on scene. So the data could be challenging to get. And I know you want a definitive answer on that, Mr. Berger, but it would be challenging to get the exact totals on that, because it's not one or the other. They cross paths sometimes based upon a patient assessment.
Commissioner Balboni's, who brought this up, I think she had some really good insight about why that information would be very helpful for us. Commissioner Balboni?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're just trying to figure out is, was it social isolation? Was it drug related. We were just trying to figure out, how it might tie to other services. So that's what the question was really about.
Right. So we'll have to go through our patient care reporting system, and basically we're going to have to look at, I guess you could say, the boxes that were checked and the narratives that were in place based upon quantifying that data. So we will continue to look into that, but I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a challenge just based upon what the exact ask is. That's for sure. But we will do our best to come up with some data for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have questions for fire?
Just
Sure.
one question. Of course, because you've had such a supportive role in COVID, now we're heading into fire season and it's really, really dry. So I'm wondering, is there anything that we should be focused on? Anything that you're worried about? Anything that, you'd want to share about preparation, just because it's one of the driest seasons we've had in a while?
Okay. Yes, I can talk to that. So yes, we never have a dull moment within the state of California or Southern California for what we have. So your fire department does a relative risk analysis every day. We look at weather data and we look at fuels data, and we have 100 years worth of fire history to look at when circumstances, fuel conditions, and weather conditions match to give us a relative risk. If we have a initial attack day, which means that we have a fire that has the possibility to start, or do we have a day where we have the possibility of fire to start and spread and go into large fire growth. So the problem is that every year we have the same vulnerability. So I can give you an example. 2018, one of the worst fire seasons that we've had in recorded history in California. But it came off the shoulder of 2 years of above average rainfall. Right now, we're at about 30% of our average rainfall for this year. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we don't have the same amount of robust growth, that our fuels are drier this year than they normally are. But what's a challenging point is that we live in a human element fire regime, meaning we need to have some human intervention to start that fire, compared to being elsewhere where Mother Nature is the governing factor behind a fire to start and spread. So we look at those elements every day and have that relative risk on how it's going to, each day gives us that situational awareness on if we need to tactically hire extra people, move resources to different areas of vulnerability. So this time of year, it's in the Antelope Valley area because it's a drier climate out there. And so do we need to pre-position resources to meet the aggressive initial attack beyond what we already do? And I know this is a long kind of answer for you, but I can tell you this, we just don't wing it every day. We really put a lot of best science into having this operational readiness on how we perform every day.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And if there's anything that we should be thinking about as residents to try and help prepare, I'm sure we'd love to provide it as you go about your work diligently.
Yeah, information is available on our website, and we need our residents, and because it's not just West Hollywood, they're going to commute to possibly the beachfront somewhere, whether it's in Orange County or it's in Los Angeles County or Ventura County, on those high fire hazard days that we know we get in the fall. So it's not about just being within West Hollywood, it's about how do you travel and what preparedness do you have and situational awareness do we have as people, as we live our lives, to know our vulnerabilities based upon a hot, dry, windy day. So that Ready, Set, Go program that we have in place, it has great video behind it, has great video behind it, and resources for us to be prepared is significant, and that's available. And Megan can actually facilitate getting you some of that information so we can share with the residents when they're out traveling and enjoying the summer.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have questions for fire?
Great, thank you for the extra time.
Thank you so much for your report. Thanks everyone from fire. Moving on to the sheriff's report, the monthly sheriff's report. Oh, I'm sorry, Lieutenant Mulder, before we start, I believe we have a public comment from Danny Roman, who wasn't able to make it during earlier public comments, but he has a comment for Sheriff. Is Danny still on the call?
It appears he is. Go ahead and unmute.
Chair, I'll send him an email. Maybe we can have Lieutenant Mulder get started.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Lieutenant Mulder?
Hi, good evening, everybody. And first of all, welcome back to Commissioner Oliver. Good to have you back on the commission. So for April of 2021, last month, Part 1 crime was actually up citywide 19%, and that's 99 Part 1 crime incidents when compared to last April of 2020 with 83 incidents. And that last April of 2020 was actually, to put this all in kind of perspective and context, the lowest Part 1 crime number in the West Hollywood city history. March and April actually of last year were both two of the lowest numbers. So, and even before COVID, we were actually averaging about 180 to 200 Part 1 incidents per month. And the year-to-date Part 1 crimes are still down overall year-to-date when compared to the same time last year, down 4%. The West Side is up 13%. The city center area, which you guys were talking about before, was up 57% last month. And the East Side was down 8%. And the increase for city center was kind of driven by aggravated assaults and burglaries and grand theft. The breakdown of crime, how it occurred over the city, 44% of the Part 1 crimes occurred on the West Side, 33% occurred on the city center side, and 23% occurred on the east side of town. You know, we continue to conduct our saturation patrols with our special teams. We have certain days that we conduct those operations, and actually plainclothes operations addressing burglaries and addressing robberies and some other crimes. We're also in contact with residential buildings and commercial buildings regarding information we provide them about cameras and lighting and so forth, and how to at least fend off crime, and if not that, then kind of record it to give us information so we can at least try to catch the perpetrators. We also participate, as Kristen alluded to earlier, calls with the Chamber of Commerce and the Sunset Bid Business Improvement District calls about the variety of issues. We also continue to monitor the situation created by the marijuana dispensary Cookies, which, as you all know, is located in the city of Los Angeles at Melrose Avenue and Kings. We have had recent additional complaints from residents about people that are going to Cookies who are parking illegally on Kings Road, smoking marijuana in the street, hanging out, causing a disturbance in the area. And we're also told that Cookie security no longer is monitoring those streets and letting people know they can't park there, letting people know they can't hang out and smoke marijuana there, and those types of things. So we're continuing our efforts to address this business, and it does indeed need to move out of the area. We also conduct our weekly care outreach operations for people who are experiencing homelessness with our special teams, and we've continued our partnership with Tarzana Treatment Center and have expanded it to all arrestees at the station, not only ones that may happen on a particular with a particular operation. There's been some questions about reopening in general, about how the city, as the city reopens, and public safety plan behind that. And this is something that the public safety director, Kristen Cook, and I have been discussing for quite some time, for a while. And thank you to Kristen for giving us the flexibility, again, to move people around, and that's what we've been doing. Our entertainment policing team obviously is out there back on the regular hours in the evenings. We also have east side and west side foot beats that are every day, with day and into the evening. We have deputies that are working with code compliance on the weekends. And we also, with the out on Robertson over the weekend, we have deputies that are working there also to provide security for that event, both nights. As you know, the Sheriff's Department has agreed to participate in the study by the Center for Policing Equity, and our county council has approved the MOU. It looks good on our side, and now the MOU is just being reviewed by the city attorney at West Hollywood. So we're making a lot of progress there, getting that signed and getting on with the study. Earlier it was alluded to that on June 11th at 10 a.m. there's going to be a public safety business meeting. So hopefully some of you can attend that. And then May 19th at 6 p.m. there's a virtual hate crimes summit that hopefully y'all can tune into too. The information for that event is posted on West Hollywood Sheriff Station social media on Twitter and Facebook too. And that is all I have, and I'm happy to take any questions.
If I could just really fast, Lieutenant Mulder, could you give me the percentages again for east side versus mid versus west side for Part 1 crimes?
Yeah, so in terms of the numbers, like so on the west side of town, yeah, you want the Part 1 crime percentage number, or did you want how it broke down in terms of the percentage of most crimes where they occurred?
No, just the percentage for east versus mid versus west.
Okay, so on the west side, we had 44% of the Part 1 incidents occur on the west side. On the city center, we had 33% of Part 1 crimes occurred in that area. And on the east side, we had 23% of the Part 1 crimes that occurred on the east side.
Got it. So I just wanted to have those numbers read out again so I could throw in again when we talk about where we want to locate our city sources. It looks like the majority of our crime is happening on the west and the mid and in mid city as opposed to the east side. And I feel like for a long time, the east side had a bigger crime problem than it does now. And I just want to make sure that we're not moving forward. We're not neglecting Center City and the west side and continuing to concentrate everything on the east side. Anybody have any questions for Sheriff? Commissioner Berger? Commissioner Balbone? I think Commissioner Balbone had her hands up first.
I just had a question about two questions. One was about the rate. I'm hoping that wasn't the same situation that we saw previously with the violent attack in someone's home, but is there anything that you can share about that?
Yeah, that one reported rape was from actually occurred in 2017.
Okay, and then the other question. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then the other question was about the aggravated assaults. They seem to be increasing, and I know that we talked last time. It would be good to understand. I think we've heard that there are kind of two situations. There's a lot of transient on transient assaults happening, but then there are also interactions with everyone outside of that. Both are problematic and upsetting and disturbing, but I'm wondering, is there a way to get a breakdown so that we understand who the victims are, and then that can help us figure out what solutions we might need to think about?
Yes, of the aggravated assaults that occurred for last month, there were 11, and of the 11, 5 suspects were arrested, which is good. Almost half we arrested people. At least 4 of those involved a transient individual of those, and as we go down the list here, there was one that was a domestic violence situation. Another one was a roommate. Roommates got in a fight. There was also a one situation where an individual wanted to get into a club and threatened the security guard with a knife. There was another situation, as you might have known, there was a shooting that occurred at the Classic Cat. And then another situation appeared to be a road rage situation where somebody drove their car towards somebody else that they were having a dispute with. And then there was another fight with security at another club establishment on Sunset Boulevard. And the other 4 of them then were transient involved assaults, and one was an assault on a deputy at one of the hotels. Does that help to kind of give an idea of what they are?
Yes, thank you. That was very helpful. Like we've got issues with transients and assaults, but that we also have a lot of rage out there. So I'm appreciative of the update, and I'd just like to make sure that we keep watching that, because it sounds like we've got a lot of the folks at the clubs at risk right now too. So it's helpful to understand the breakdown between our businesses and the transient population. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments for Sheriff? Commissioner Berger?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick look at the mailbox thefts and a little bit of an update. I did contact the people that I had contact with previously who addressed the mailbox, and she doesn't work there anymore, and so the other people didn't respond back. But it looked to me like the mailbox thefts there, I counted 5, and 2 of them were unsecured, and like Amazon packages or something like that. 3 of them were forced entry, and then only 1 of them wasn't forced entry, and that was our concern is, did they have a key, a master key? Maybe you could speak to that. It appeared to me like that's kind of gone down. And then I'll ask a couple more questions after that.
Yeah, so last month, it looks like there were 8 mailroom thefts. And it appears we also had a couple arrests for a couple of those. And then we also arrested a male and female team that were committing these. We have them for 1, but we believe there's probably more that they've committed. So they were arrested last month as well. So it does appear that might be, the mail theft issue might be subsiding a bit. And we did have a couple arrests. So that was also helpful.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you about that team. It looked like they were involved in some last month too. Okay, the vehicle burglaries. I have one question. We had like 15 roughly that I counted. 7 were the smash and grab. There were 7 that weren't forced, so they were like unlocked cars or something like that. And then there was only 1 that was forced, but that wasn't a smash. What I'm kind of curious on, and by the way, none of them got caught. Not 0 of the people that do the vehicle burglaries got caught. I'm curious a little bit about, and I probably should have got you guys this information ahead of time so you could actually look it up, but maybe you can give us a rough idea of the people that are doing the victims of the unlocked vehicles, particularly. Are they generally tourists, or are they West Hollywood residents?
Yeah, so, I don't know that information. We did do actually a check of, I think we did for last year, crime in West Hollywood, and try to look at residents versus people that weren't residents. And it broke down, I forgot the exact period of time, I think it was for all Part 1 crimes, but it broke down to about 50-50. So I don't know specifically about the, I have 14 incidents listed for last month, but, we can take a look at that for those 14 and see where the victims lived. That's how we established it. But a rough look at it, I think it was the period of time for last year, it was about 50-50. And that's it. I think those were for all Part 1 crime.
Okay, yeah, the reason I'm asking is because if our outreach goes to residents, I'm suspecting that it may be a lot of tourists that are leaving their cars unlocked and things like that because they don't know. But if it's not, then it could be helpful for us to reach out to some of our residents that are doing that. And the last question is about the suspects that were arrested. By the way, good job on the responding deputies. You got 6 people that responded, and you had 2 other agencies that detained the suspects. Again, we brought this up. I didn't bring it up to the commission about the breakdown your investigator looked at about the number of these guys and girls that are arrested. A lot of them were doing it. They were assaults and things like this. Of the percentage that get arrested, are these a lot of the same people that are causing the trouble? The transients, because that's what it appeared like the last time you guys looked the data up. Are they some of the same types of or same people that are causing the trouble with the businesses that came to us and were complaining about all kinds of people causing trouble there with the businesses?
So yes and no, and I hate to answer like that, but there are some people that are transient individuals in our community who do repeat crimes, and then in terms of other transient individuals, sometimes these are new people that we haven't seen before. So there are individuals that are repeat offenders, but there are also new faces too.
Okay, so I wanted to bring that up is what can you do? What's causing this repeat? Is it because of the laws just don't allow you to do something with these same group of people that are causing a lot of the trouble?
So that's a very big question that you ask, and there's I think a lot of factors that I think affect that. So, if somebody's arrested for a crime, sometimes depending on their prior history, if they're on probation or parole, I mean, a lot can affect whether they get released pretty immediately. Jail overcrowding, and then whether charges are going to be filed in the particular case. They do consider, the individual's mental health capacity. So there's so many things that could affect it, but sometimes people get arrested for a particular crime. They're back out on the street because a lot of them are misdemeanor crimes too, and they don't spend a lot of time in jail, and they are not really held till they go to court. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get something out there for our commissioners to start thinking about as well. I know another commissioner was on there too, a meeting with the county, and Dr. John Sharon was on there as well, and he brought up something that I just want to throw out to our commissioners that I was surprised at. I didn't know that one of the bottlenecks for the mental health and the med team is they don't have enough places to take the people. And I didn't know. That surprised me. I didn't know we didn't have enough places. And So I just wanted to bring that up, and or maybe our commissioners to start thinking a little bit about that. I don't know what we can do.
I think Tori, we've actually addressed that when we've had human services and when we've talked about homeless outreach, that we don't have enough beds and we don't have enough mental health facilities for people to go to. So I think that all ties in, and that's something that we're all aware of, just not something that we can specifically do something about, because that means facilities have to be built, laws have to be changed, things like that. But I think that we're all really well aware of the fact that there are not enough places for people who have are experiencing mental illness for them to be sent, except for the Twin Towers downtown, and that's where so many people end up going.
I was more concerned about where the Met teams take somebody right at that moment. Do you guys have enough places somewhere? It sounded like they didn't have places to take them right then.
Met does have facilities to take folks. Yes, we need more is a very good point, Tori. Absolutely. But our Met team has successfully placed numerous individuals, as you all have seen from their report, in the proper medical facilities for care. But we need a lot more, and we need a lot of laws to change as well. And that's way beyond West Hollywood. But yes, they are receiving care locally.
Okay.
Yeah, Tori, Chair Laughlin and Kristen are correct. I mean, they have a place to go initially when our Met team contacts them and they want to take them for an evaluation. They always do have a place to go to conduct the evaluation. But I think on the back end of that, once that's been completed and there's a determination made where they go after that, then I think that's the question that the chair mentioned that we're still working on. I think as a society, still working on getting that together.
Thank you.
Do we have other questions for Sheriff? No? Everyone's good?
Yeah, come on, move.
Okay, if we could not have anyone except for commissioners speak during the meeting, that would be great if everyone else could keep their microphones on mute. Okay, and now we're going to move on. I think we sort of touched on cookies. Does anyone else have any questions about cookies? No, we're all good. Okay.
I'm sorry, Chair Laughlin. I do. Lieutenant Mulder, what's our most recent update with cookies? Because as we all know, it's quite problematic. It's on the edge of West Hollywood. It would probably be best if, in everyone's interest, if they relocated. Are there any updates on what's going on?
We're still waiting to see if the Department of Cannabis Commission will bring that this situation before that commission. There's also, I guess, another hearing that we're waiting for as well, and we are pursuing with the City of Los Angeles, the City of West Hollywood is, and the sheriff, and asking them what's going to happen, asking that this business is removed from the area, go somewhere else, but right where it's at is not appropriate. So we're continuing to have that dialogue. The people that live in the area, the residents, are continuing to send emails. They have of recent describing additional problems. Myself and LAPD are trying to set up a meeting with Cookies Security. They had reached out to us, so we're trying to get something organized with them to talk about some of these issues. But the ball is in the City of Los Angeles's court, and advocacy needs to be brought to the City of Los Angeles to have a resolution for this.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions about cookies or further comments? Commissioner Oliver?
I just wanted to ask if the LA City Attorney's Office had been a part of those meetings, and if nuisance charges had been discussed from the City of Los Angeles.
So yes, Commissioner, the City Attorney of City of Los Angeles is involved. They're fantastic. We've been sending over information to them, and yeah, I can't speak for the LA City process. I think it's a little bit slower than a West Hollywood process obviously would be. But they've been real cooperative in trying to work on a solution with this for us and for the City of Los Angeles. It's not only our residents that have been complaining and concerned, and rightfully so, but it's also been people that live in the City of Los Angeles, right around Cookies, business owners. The times that I've been in the area, they've come up to me to talk to me about the problem. And so obviously a big problem. But yes, the city attorney, we've been working with them, and they've been a great partner to work with. And I'm not sure of the status of any particular litigation or criminal litigation they're going to bring against that business.
Anyone else have any questions or concerns about Cookies? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Mulder. Moving on to reimagining policing equity, or sorry, promoting equity and Measure J.
Okay, so the way we have titled this item, it'll sit on the agenda every month. We will add Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commission, and obviously some months we may focus on one area more than others. I was hoping we'd be fully seated tonight, but we're still missing one more direct appointment, as Commissioner Norton knows, and we'll kind of dig into ongoing budget issues and staffing and resources that the city has historically made non-law enforcement, which we're very supportive of, like parking enforcement, block by block security ambassadors, those types of things. So West Hollywood kind of already has a good structure in place with utilizing non-sworn resources for issues that aren't criminal, if that makes sense. So with regard to Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commission meeting in June, it is not a Brown acted meeting. So we will have the chair and the vice chair. That would be Amanda and Tori. They will be panelists with a couple of the Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commissioners as well. They have Brown Act issues as well. So they're going to pick a couple of their commissioners that don't meet quorum to be on the panel. We also have some social service providers, and MET will be focusing the conversation around mental health. For staff, like Janet, Bill, and I, and we're hoping the other 5 commissioners, we all join the WebEx as well, as we'll join on the participant side, so our cameras aren't on, but we do hope to have the whole participation of the whole commission for June. The COC's primary staff person, for those that have been on the meetings, you know her name, she talks every meeting, Jennifer Osborne. She is fantastic. She's just back from vacation. So she is working on scheduling the WebEx, getting a flyer together, and the city is ready to help advertise that. They'll be using the city logo and start getting the word out for this community conversation. So this, as we've discussed before, is during your regular meeting time. So it'll be Monday, June 14th at 6 o'clock. So we won't have a Brown Acted Public Safety Commission meeting in June. I'm kind of repeating stuff you already know, but the next meeting that we have, again, to kind of have another community conversation, Lieutenant Mulder has been working on a potential speaker for us, a high profile speaker. And if this works out, what we would like to do is have a webinar style community conversation from 6 to 7 p.m. and then push our regular Public Safety Commission, because I don't want to cancel you guys 2 months in a row, have regular Public Safety Commission starting at 7. If the speaker doesn't work out, we'll just go ahead and start you all at 6. So just kind of looking for a little bit of consensus from you all, since we won't meet in June, that you all are okay with staff and sheriff scheduling a speaker if we're able to get the speaker in July. And I know I'm not giving the name, but I can't give the name yet. So if that works for all of you, that's what we would like to do for July.
Commissioner Roche?
Is there a way that that it can just be added, the speaker can be added to our agenda? It can just be an agenda item and we can allot just maybe 30 minutes to them speaking versus an entire hour? Just throwing it out there as an option.
We could explore that. This speaker is a high enough profile speaker that the webinar style is probably what will work best, with people able to submit questions in advance. And then we're going to do some sort of chat function where people can submit questions during the webinar as well. So that's the speaker's preferred format. Bill, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And we're choosing the same days of the commission for the purposes of availability?
Of your availability. Because
Right,
I know I already have the 7 of you locked down,
Right,
so,
right.
But
Okay.
again, like, I'd rather not cancel 2 regular meetings in a row. And again, I don't foresee the availability of the speaker really going beyond 45 minutes to an hour anyway. So we would just kind of start the regular meeting at 7. We can also kind of continue talking about some of the issues that are raised during the community conversation during the regular meeting, that type of thing.
Yeah, the only reason why I ask is if we are receiving, or if if it's open to the public and they're submitting questions, it could take longer than an hour, or what we
will be
anticipate.
ending at an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, the speaker won't be available beyond that. If it all works out. And I apologize for my caginess.
I like the idea. I like the high profile speaker being before the meeting, because maybe that will encourage some people to stick around for our regular meeting after.
That's what we're hoping.
Conversation continues.
Yeah, to kind of flow into, the more Brown acted meeting. So kind of like a special guest, special presentation, but separate for Brown Act reasons, obviously. Okay, so Bill and I will keep working on that, and we will keep you all posted. Bill also mentioned that the MOU is with the city attorney at this point. So we cleared county council, and actually Bill and I have been meeting with CPE about once a week. We have a fantastic liaison there, Sean, and he's been sending, just kind of checking in with us. How's the temperature? What's going on? We've been hearing about some of his other work across the country. Lieutenant Mulder and Sean have also talking about, the data dump and how, kind of what they asked for and what the system can give, to make sure those 2 things will talk to each other kind of once we're ready. So we're really excited. So we're just kind of looking for the city to be able to sign off on the MOU, and then we'll be ready to go for that. For Measure J, for those of you that have attended some of those meetings, they on their website, they post all their upcoming meetings, and I feel like I've really been peppering you all with a lot of emails, so I'm not going to push those to you all, but if you want to go, the schedule is on the county website, and there's also the Alternatives to Incarceration meetings, the COC meetings, and they save them all online. So like if you can't actually make the 4 o'clock Thursday or whatever it is, you can always go back and listen to a meeting at another time. I think that's all I've got at this point.
I think Commissioner Hallman had a comment.
Oh, my question was, Kristen, do we know when we might know who our mystery speaker is going to be?
Soon. Yeah. And again, like I don't want you guys to think we're getting like Barack Obama, I mean, it's not too crazy, but it's you'll know the name.
It's Michelle Obama.
If it's Michelle Obama, I'm going to Chicago, wherever she is, to meet her in person. Love her.
Right, thank
It's just we don't want to announce something and not have it work out and then potentially embarrass this person because they're have a scheduling conflict or something. So, but again, our point is to kind of continue multiple ways to talk with the community about multiple concerns that surround equity and lots of different ways. And these are just kind of beside regular Public Safety Commission, these are just two stabs at it. One with a partnership with COC because we know COC has a captive audience and they're used to going. So we're kind of hoping that we can drive attendance to that event. And then the speaker style, I'll give Bill credit for that one. That was really his idea and it's a great one.
No, I agree. I think it's a great idea. Mix it up a little. So
yeah, it's hard when we're doing everything virtual. We're trying to keep it exciting and find ways to chat. We'll be able to do more town hall style in-person things, hopefully at some point, where you can really kind of let people get their thoughts out in person as well.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions on this? Commissioner Roche?
In our last meeting, I was hoping to, in this meeting, receive a written report clearly outlining action items regarding the process of the reimagining policing and, our process with the Center for Policing and Equity. Is there a way that could still be generated for the next meeting? I think it's just helpful for myself and possibly new commissioners who are now joining us to kind of give them the backstory as to, why we're here, the mission, the objective, the city council, charged us with this task, if you want to say. And I don't know, I think it'll just be, and personally, I would really love to see something like that. So we can just see how things are progressing, how they progressed, and then what the next action items are to come and what we can look forward to doing.
Absolutely. So we've done a couple reports to the commission in writing. Some of you were here, some of you were not. We've also put it in writing in our 6-month report, kind of update to council. So what I'll do is I'll kind of lift those pieces and drop them into a new report. And then maybe by then CPE MOU is signed and we can tell you that. So I'll just kind of continue what we've already started to share in writing.
Yeah, that would be great if you can reinsert that in our next agenda. Thank you.
Right. And we also are kind of waiting for Social Justice Task Force to get their feet on the ground and have their first meeting. City council really wants them to lead a lot of these conversations and, broadly in equity, not just on policing. And so we do plan on taking their lead on some issues, collaborating with them on some issues, and working together kind of as we go out through this calendar year.
Yeah, no, I support that wholeheartedly, but I think it's also good for those of us who are newer to the commission to also get ourselves up to speed so we can be more effective for when that time comes.
Definitely.
Does anyone else have any questions on this item? Commissioner Balbon?
I did have a question regarding our next meeting. Will we still receive the reports from fire, block by block, and the sheriff's department?
If we have them and there's no reason to not have them, we will post them in their regular places online. It won't be in agenda packet. It'll be under public safety reports. So you know how you click on, it's a different link and it'll say block by block, sheriff, fire. They will be posted there. I mean, at minimum, we can email them to you all, but the goal is to post them in the public safety report page. But just know that current agenda packet will look like May until July is ready.
I think that would be really helpful. I get a little nervous just because of everything that's going on. I'd love to make sure that we see those reports on time. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, let's move on to items from subcommittees. No items from subcommittees, correct? Any additional items from staff? No additional items from staff. No more public comments came in, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And then, Kristen, do we need to touch on the Public Safety Commission meeting schedule? Any further?
I think we covered that. And Chair, are you going to be with us in July, or is that your last meeting?
July will be my last meeting.
Okay. So August will be August 9th. And then again, please let me know. We checked it once upon a time, but make sure September, October, November all look good for everybody. December as well. I don't think we're crossing any holidays, any Jewish holidays in particular, but please let me know so we can make adjustments at the July meeting.
Any further commissioner comments? Commissioner Balbo?
I had a question regarding National Night Out. And I understand that we may not be prepared to do things in person, but I think when we think about public safety and our community, something's in order. So I just wanted to ask, I know it's coming up in August, if there's any plan and what that might look like.
So right now is a no for in person, unless, again, smaller vaccinated folks want to follow the health order according to I've been vaccinated, masks off rules. We're not out of this pandemic, and we're not going to be out of this pandemic in August. And it's dangerous to promote partying because people have already forgotten. I saw it myself out on Robertson Saturday night and Sunday. Everyone's running around. No one's wearing masks. People aren't being jerks. They're just not doing it anymore. And we're not there yet. And so Jasmine, as you all know, works on Neighborhood Watch and National Night Out. At some point that will transition back to public safety, but I just kind of wrote a note just to see maybe we can do some advertising, some reminding, but unless the virus completely disappears, encouraging gathering is not something I'm comfortable with.
Or even, Kristen, just something virtual. And I don't know what that would look like, but that would be fantastic.
Yep. And there might be a way, we can, we can look at things. So if folks, I'm kind of babbling at this point, so I'm going to stop talking. But yes, we're totally on board for virtual reminders. And at this point, not for anything in person. City Hall staff, we'll be back by then. City Hall will be open, but it'll be distanced and masked, and a party with food and masks off is still kind of scary in big numbers.
Yeah, it would definitely have to be reimagined or something different, but I hate to see it pass by another year without the ability to focus on the community in some way.
There's just no way to police it. We know Councilor Oliver and Councilmember Erickson are vaccinated and are following the health order by being in the same room, but how do you do that with somebody's neighborhood? It's impossible. And then it's city sanctioned at that point. What if somebody gets sick? It's just, there's no, it breaks my heart, not to be able to do it because it's such a fun event, even for departments that aren't public safety. They love National Night Out. They get to run around and say hi to everybody. But people's health have got to be the top priority at this point until we get through this pandemic. Kids aren't vaccinated yet. There's tons of kids at National Night Out. It's just not safe to promote that mixing of households quite yet.
Thank you. Any other comments before we close? Nope. Calls for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. We'll keep you posted.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Night.